However, the issue went beyond preventing the ambush. He needed to uncover the mastermind behind it. He couldn't find the perpetrator behind an incident in his past life, but this time around he promised that he'll definitely uncover and punish them. The siblings gathered to discuss the situation. Tyron voiced his suspicion, feeling that something was off about the support they were receiving and the timing of it. He mentioned that it was particularly strange that the support troops were coming from Balsar, a faction that viewed their family as enemies. The fact that Balsar was providing royal support, which had never happened before, raised even more suspicion. Tyron was certain that he wasn't the only one suspecting them and believed that Balsar might be up to something. Kyril, who was listening, understood that Tyron's suspicions were valid. He knew that it was happening because the Emperor Titan Dane had not yet named the successor. The Emperor had 3 sons, Ruan, Oliver, and Croman. The frail third Prince Croman was not actively involved in the struggle for the throne, leaving the fight primarily between the first Prince Ruan and the second Prince Oliver. The balance of power shifted when their father Cruel, who was the commander of the Blue Knights, supported Oliver instead of Ruan. This naturally led to tensions with Balsar, who supported Ruan. The first Prince Tyron explained that Balsar represented the first prince's faction, and they were now sending support troops from the border. He pointed out that the timing was suspicious, especially when their father was not around. Mart agreed that Tyron had a point, but he assured them that the knights led by their father would return to the north for the extermination, and Balsar wouldn't dare challenge the Blue Knights if they were in their right minds. Tyr frowned in anger at the response. Mart added that above all it was an edict from the royal family, so they should refrain from having disrespectful conversations. However, in his mind, Cairo acknowledged the burdensome situation Tyron must be facing at his age. He silently encouraged Iron to keep doubting, as his suspicion would make him a better strategist. Cairo wanted Tyron to develop into a brilliant strategist who could assist him. Tyron declared that they should proceed as planned and stated that he would participate in the extermination. This surprised Martin. Tyron told Mark that they didn't need to handle it personally. Kyril, who was taken aback by Tyron's decision, realized that things were indeed changing. Elliot and Randall offered to accompany Tyron, but he told them that if he needed an escort, he would take Randall and Kyril with him. This shocked Kyril, and the 2 brothers were both angry and speechless. However, they agreed, and Kyril advised them to start preparing as well before leaving the room, leaving his brothers behind. As he walked, he marveled at Tyron's impressive decision-making skills. He recognized that Tyron had chosen the support troops that would naturally arouse suspicion. In this situation, they couldn't send Mart, who was the first in line to succeed. Tyron had played 2 cards: Randall, who was trustworthy, and himself the expendable one, with little regard for life. He understood that as the newcomer and outcast in the mansion, Tyron wanted to observe him up close and find out the truth for himself. Tyron intended to find the answers on the battlefield, and he thought it was an excellent plan. In his previous life, Tyron hadn't participated in the extermination, so he knew that things were changing. He confidently believed that even the disaster that began with Randall's death and the future itself would change. He swung his sword back and threw it hard toward the forest, then immediately ran to catch it, cutting through the trees in his path. He balanced himself to stop, and the trees he had exploded into pieces in the air. He thought that he had no intention of just watching as events unfolded. With his own hands, he would directly change the future. 5 days later, the Knights of Balsar greeted the members of the McGyver family. The leader of the Knights of Balsar introduced himself as Arden and informed them that in accordance with the royal order, 500 Balsarian troops had arrived to aid the McGyver family. Mart thanked Arden, acknowledging the difficulty of defending the border and expressing gratitude on behalf of their father Cruel. Arden bowed and accepted the gratitude, but privately thought that Mart didn't seem particularly threatening. Arden also knew that the real danger came from the 4 children brought by Eula, who were meant to compensate for Mart's shortcomings. As The eldest he observed Kyril, who was wearing a mask, wondering who he was. According to the reports, there were only 4 adopted children, so Arden questioned Mart about the masked individual. Mart walked closer to Kyril, explaining that Kyril was the 6th member who had recently joined the family ward, requested that Arden understand Kyril's mask. Citing certain circumstances, Arden responded that they now had to refer to them as the 6 lords, not 5. He found the masked man to be quite odd and wondered if Count Cruel had no pride accepting such inexperienced individuals as his adopted children. Afterward, Arden informed the brothers that the Balsar troops would finish preparing for the departure and then walked away. In his mind, he furiously labeled Arden as a filthy spy of the Lorien Empire. Recognizing that they hadn't seen each other for a while, he knows that even if the Balsar family supports the first prince, they wouldn't be so blind as to target their family, and they wouldn't dare to move recklessly, not with the shadow of his father's Night Squad. This move signifies that the Balsar family has a certain level of assurance, which means someone outside the Empire is pulling the strings. Bart looks at him and asks what is on his mind. He replies that it is nothing much. Mart tells him that he understands why he is wearing a mask and why they still can't reveal his true identity. He tells him that it doesn't bother him, and he thinks it's actually a blessing in disguise. Also, he believes there is much he can do behind that mask, and above all it conceals his existence. Arden shouts to his troops to move out, and they begin walking. Mark calls Kyril behind Arden's back and tells him to keep an eye on Arden, to which he nods in agreement, thinking that the sea he longed for is coming later. They are all on horseback. Climbing up the forest, he notices something and realizes that gradually the forest path is getting narrower, which is definitely where they were ambushed before, so he thinks the first thing to do is suddenly someone shouts to them that goblins have been spotted up ahead, and there are more than 100 of them. Arden shouts to everyone to prepare for battle, but he knows that he needs to watch every move they make, leaving no stone unturned, because he won't let things go in Arden's way. This time, the goblins jump toward and attack the troops who are panicking. While trying to block them, Arden jumps toward the goblins and slices them to death. After killing the goblins in front, he tells his troops not to be startled by a petty ambush like this and orders them to maintain formation and switch to the offensive. Then he orders them to attack, to which the troops follow and stab the goblins in front of them. On the other hand, he is riding his horse and swings his sword back, slicing the goblins in his way. He realizes that there aren't enough goblins there, and that number couldn't possibly result in the kind of devastation they faced in the past, Randall dying to a mere pack of goblins like this is just impossible. Moreover, the initial shock of the ambush has faded, and the situation is leaning in their favor, so he knows that there is definitely something else. Suddenly, he hears people shouting in pain, and when he looks ahead, he sees some troops being thrown in the air and others shouting that a massive attack is coming. The troops inform them that it's coming from behind, causing the brothers to look back and see angry big teeth, a large firm monster's hand, and huge goblins shouting at them in anger. The troops are stunned, and he is surprised to realize that it is the Goblin Chief. The Goblin Chief is not just strong itself, but it usually operates with an army of around 3,000 goblins, making it a significant threat. He now understands how Randall about kill, and at least his first suspicion has somewhat been answered. Tyron shouts for everyone to fall back and not confront the Goblin Chief directly, but Arden turns back, causing Tyron to ask what he is doing. While Kyril wonders about Arden, he rides his horse toward the chief goblin, ordering everyone to maintain formation and retreat. Kyril wonders if Arden really is just a spy from the Empire with no connection to the incident, but he thinks it's ridiculous. Arden's presence there can't be as simple as a coincidence, so he plans to see how long Arden can keep up the act. Arden furiously swings his weapon at the goblins in his way, then he dismounts his horse while ordering his troops to clear the way and not to chase recklessly. The rest of them follow him, leaving the troops shocked. Arden activates his sword, releasing magic power and sharpening it, causing the goblins to shout in pain. He points it toward the chief goblin and throws it, telling it to die, but the chief just swings his weapon, deflecting it away before it hits him. He jumps and catches his spear in the air, then he launches himself to stab the chief goblin. In the process, Kyril notices Arden's hand that holds the spear and is shocked to figure out something. Arden stabs the goblin furiously, but as he expected, Arden has a trick up his sleeve. Just a moment ago, very cunningly, he deliberately grazed it with his attack. Arden pulls his spear out and the goblin furiously attacks him with its weapon, but he blocks it. However, the force of the attack throws him to the ground, causing the troops to worry. The chief goblin turns around, grabs one of the goblins, and walks away. Arden orders his troops to go after them and not spare anyone. As he watches Arden, he understands why no one noticed it. With the excuse of chasing the goblin chief, Balsar's soldiers are driven from the battlefield. When only the goblin soldiers are left, they will execute an attack when everyone has let their guard down. He praises Arden for his nice strategy. He has already understood all of Arden's schemes, and after Arden attempted to fool him with his poor acting, suddenly Tyron calls him and suggests that they should leave all the others to Arden and focus on guarding the area. However, he tells Tyron that he's not going after the monsters, but rather after Arden. Later, they are near the top of the forest and Arden stops and looks around. He thinks it will do and tells the soldiers that he will go after the goblin chief, while they split into two groups to take care of the remaining goblins. One of the higher ranking soldiers asks him if he's going alone, and Arden replies that if there is a goblin chief, it means there are also masterminds or sorcerer taking care of everything they need to completely clear out all the remaining goblins. He then asks the man if by any chance he doesn't believe that he can finish them all by himself. The man apologizes and says he didn't mean it that way. Arden leaves, saying that the rest are going to be just a little bothersome for him, thinking that it's okay whether it's a little or a lot. Later, he stops somewhere in the forest and says that it should be easy. Looking at the chief goblin in pain and the other goblins, he dismounts his horse and tells the goblins to come to him, saying that he'll beat them all by himself. Then a man welcomes him and tells him that they have been waiting for him. He tells the man that the little ones from the McGyver family turned out to be good at fighting and asks the man to tell the chief goblin to go away. The man tells the chief goblin and that it can leave. Suddenly someone says, so it was the tangent spot, making Arden look back in shock, asking who it was. Kyril tells Arden that he has been fighting too hard and that he should at least try to give them the right context details, as the route was problematic as well. He then says wooden cloud, surprising Arden and causing him to ask how Kyril knew about it. Arden points his spear at him and asks if he is of the same kind or an accomplice. Kyril replies that it's a shame and he really doesn't know him. He tells Arden that he is there to check and confirm because he also hasn't received any reports about him. He doesn't care if Arden believes him or not, but he also has business with the McGyver family. He asks Arden if he's following what he is saying and called Arden's full name. Arden realizes that Kyril knows his full name and wonders if he is really from the cloud. Then he explains that the man is controlling the goblin chief, meaning that he must have spent a lot from the root, and he bets the sorcerer are hiding around that area. But Kyril apologizes and tells that he was being too much and should have been more careful, as clouds should protect their own secrets. He hopes that Arden understand, and since it's a special case, to which Arden nods in agreement. Kyril tells him that he has responsibilities to complete as well, and the branches should just do what they were asked, while the stems are responsible for reporting to the roots. Hearing this, Arden is sure that Kyril is one of them. He tells Kyril that on the opposite side there are goblins hiding and waiting to execute an ambush. When he gives the signal, they will move to the McGyver soldiers' location to attack them immediately. Arden also tells him that the charm from the root will help them control the goblins and send signals, and the charm will take care of it all. He walks closer to the man who's holding the charm, saying that it's a relief to hear that the charm will handle all of those tasks by itself, then unexpectedly he pulls his sword out, but before Arden can stop him, he cut the sorcerer hands in instant and look back at Arden. Arden angrily asks him what the heck he just did. Kyril simply tells him that they now have more time and asks if they should take care of them one by one. Arden asks him where he came from, but Kyril walks closer to him, saying that he has a fantastic opponent there. He is glad that finally, after all that time, he has an opponent with whom he can fully radiate his charm. Barton thought he had never seen a mana blade like it before, and wondered what its attributes could be. He also knew that it was an unknown entity with both its attributes and identity shrouded in mystery. He pondered where it had come from and whether it was associated with the Tyros Union or the Istria Confederation. Kyril jumped towards Arden, intending to attack, but Arden blocked the strike using his spear.